I'm reminding myself, I'm going to ask everybody to please turn their phones off, or whatever.
How's that? Better? Did y'all hear?
See one, two.
Okay, roll call count.
Alberts,
I hear.
Cooper,
Here.
Ferguson,
Here.
Black,
Here.
Hawley,
Here.
Janelli, Katrina,
Here.
Petrofessa,
Present.
Tabersack,
Here.
Tranzillo.
Here.
Thank you. Normally we'd go right into our recognitions, and I see that there are a lot of people in the audience who are here because of it, but we're waiting for the mayor to come so that everyone's get advised. So I think we'll just start, if that's okay with you all, and wait for him to come. So we'll start with public participation. The board welcomes public participation and asks that the speakers please limit their comments to 3 minutes. Speakers may offer objective comments of school operations and programs that concern them. The board will not permit any expression of personal complaints or defamatory comments about the Board of Education personnel and or students, or against any person connected with the Danbury Public School System. So, saying that, is there anyone in the first row, which is Mr. Caccio, who's going to talk later? Oh, no, I'm sorry, and Ms. Peterson. Okay. Is anybody in the first row wanting to speak? Nope. Okay. Second row? Nope. Third row? Fourth? Fifth? Okay.
Is there anybody?
Is there anybody?
Come on, help us out. Okay.
Okay, moving along. The consent calendar.
That the Board of Education approves the items on the consent calendar exhibits 15-35 through 15-38 as recommended.
Seconded by Ralph. Petrofessa. Any questions? Comments? No? Seeing none, party lines. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the ayes have it. All right, oh, you know what, before we move on, what I would like to do is thank Kathleen Sullivan, who was with us for 41 years. She's retiring. And so is Linda Trudy. Are you Kathleen Sullivan? No, you're just saying that, so I'm sorry. Very sorry. Linda Trudy, if I'm mispronouncing your name, someone tell me. All right, thank her for her 29 years of service. Thank you very much. All righty, employee representative. Is there an employee representative? All righty. Student representatives. Did I see a student representative? Hi, would you introduce yourself, please?
Hi.
Joe, would you turn that on for her, please? There you go.
Okay, hi, I'm Grace Gelati from Danbury High School. So upcoming events are March 4th is our private schools registration. March 16th is Danbury Early College Program for all incoming freshmen. And March 30th is the Freshman Forum in the auditorium. And the Wiz is being performed by Danbury High School Productions on March 26th, 27th, and 28th, and all are invited to attend. And recent events are the boys basketball team qualified for FCX this past week at a home game. And the first game is going to be this Saturday at Ludlow. And the team we're playing and the time is to be announced. And our chess team won the championships.
Excellent. Very, very good. We'll have to have them come in so we can thank them. Alrighty, moving along. Anybody from these here? No? Alrighty. Ms. Thompson,
Yes.
would you like to join into your DPS organization? Sure.
Absolutely.
Okay, so at the last meeting, we talked about, there was a request, I think, from Mrs. Tranzillo.
I'm going to move this.
To take a look at the organizational chart, particularly with respect to coaches and support staff. So that was, I had indicated at the time that we've been working on those org charts, and I'm going to try to get it up on the screen for you here.
Can you use the microphone?
Sure. Just going to give us a second.
Kind of like Oprah.
Okay.
Karaoke. See where he's at.
Okay.
Before you find it, you gotta-
All right. So while I'm just waiting for this to heat up, the way that the organizational structure from the superintendent and down, you'll recall his leadership team, his cabinet, consists of the deputy superintendent for instruction.
I'm gonna just kill the lights there.
Because I can see it, it's just not bright enough. There we go. Okay, so the cabinet level folks are the deputy superintendent for instruction, the finance director, the HR director, and the director of special services. So what this part of the org chart starts to do is it breaks out the one quarter, the deputy superintendent for curriculum instruction, Dr. Glass, and it attempts now to show you the certified staff, and you'll see some non-certified staff as well, but mostly certified staff and how they're organized. Now, I had said last week, part of these lines, part of what makes this difficult to embody in a picture is that lines are different for different purposes. So there may be certain people who are supervisory for the purposes of doing observations and evaluations of someone. There may also be someone to whom they report for content. So you'll see as we walk through this chart that the lines get a little vague, and this is sort of our effort to put as much structure as we can on the whole system. So Dr. Glass's position is at the top there, and what basically we've envisioned, and this I should say too, came about from working collaboratively with the leadership of DSAA, of the Administrators Union, and also with NEA Danbury. This first kind of tranche here is intended to identify those people who have a supervisory responsibility, and they're all sort of overlapping. So you see building administrators all the way on the left, and I should say this is a format that we use for a lot of different purposes, so there's some information that may or may not be of interest to you, but the 206 administrator means that those are the 206-day employees as opposed to the 225 administrators who tend to be in the secondary area, so they work a little bit longer of a school year. So you see building administrators, basically building principals, curriculum coordinators, we're going to break each one of these boxes down in a minute. Curriculum coordinators, which really are focused on content. Associate principals for instruction, of which we now have two, one at the high school and one for the middle school level. And that would be Dr. Martins at the high school level and Dr. Zalia at the middle school level. And then the administrator for evaluation validator, that would be Linda Schreiner. And we put that position in as we were adopting Marzano because we realized that it became essential for us to have someone fill that role of validating across the district. And that's what that position is. So each one of these four people have different responsibilities for the team that you're going to see that comes next. But because we really didn't see a need to prioritize one as opposed to the other, that's why they're sort of existing in that structure. Okay, now I apologize if this gets real hard to see, mostly because as you can see it's hard to fit it onto the paper. And I apologize if I'm blocking anybody here, but again, deputy superintendent's up at the top, and so now I'm just breaking down curriculum coordinators, so that was that one box that we saw in the previous slide. And going across from left to right, you can see math, science, and STEM, Dr. Russ Valley, curriculum coordinator for humanities, Kara Casimiro, reading, Chris Press, curriculum coordinator for world language, Augusto Gomes, library and media, which has been vacant for some time, and we've had to make some adjustments in how we run that particular content area, and fine arts and PE also at the curriculum coordinator level. We eliminated that, Dr. Glass helped me out, it was a couple of years ago though, that we eliminated that. 4, I think. So again, to kind of go across to the left, and they're very parallel structures, you'll see. Each one has some sort of clerical support, which is the little box there. And again, 52-week or 46-week secretaries are really more relevant to that bargaining unit, but that's why they're included there. And then under each content area, you can see the department heads, content leads, and coaches. Now, the department heads, I think, are fairly self-explanatory with quite a few of them, and I'll see them in a subsequent slide as we break down by content area. But department heads at the secondary level with one exception. We've been talking about this coordinator of content for math at the elementary level, Dr. Mead, but primarily at the secondary level. And then content leads, which are phasing out at this point, but those were originally the people that were fulfilling a lot of that department head responsibility before we had them. And right now, they're really helping to steer some of the content work. And coaches. So the coaches, and they vary depending on which curriculum area we're talking about, but that's basically how they fit into, if you're a visual learner, as I am, that's how they fit into the structure. So the coaches, to go back to that first slide where I said the lines are really divided, well, the coaches may work in a building, so ultimately they are under the responsibility of the building principal, but for content reasons, they may also be working directly with the content leader, like in this case with Dr. Rosvali. They'll also be working with the associate principal for instruction, who's at the secondary level and is overseeing them as well. So again, different functions will correspond to different structure, depending on what we're talking about. Same parallel with humanities, same with reading is a little bit more intensive. And again, I'm going to go individually through each one so you can see them. But a few more blocks that I'll talk about in a minute. World language, library media, and fine arts and PE. All right. Okay, so if we take a look just at, for example, let's make that a little bit bigger. This is just the math science area. So you can see, again, the curriculum coordinator at the top, clerical support, and then math, science, and STEM. So along the left box, you're seeing what you would traditionally associate as the department heads, and they've got varying responsibilities that are listed there. For example, math 9-12, and there's also math STEM at the middle school level because we thought we really needed some additional support at the middle school level. Below that, you see the K-5 math, and then math specialists who are that team of 8 or 9, 8 I think at this point, math specialists who right now are working both on curriculum writing and also on pushing in to provide support in the classrooms by building. And then a numeracy coach, you also see that position as well. Again, all of which are, these positions are ones that we put in largely with Alliance money to make sure that we've got sufficient staff in the classroom providing support in areas where we've identified a need. Science, we just have the department head there, 9-12. And then the two coaches on the right-hand side for STEM, those are the ones at Westside Middle School. One's a traditional STEM coach in science, technology, engineering, math. The other is more of a tech coach, and that's Kyle Evans underneath. And again, those are the only two positions that will be in that building. So as that building continues to grow, those people will obviously have a larger group. Okay. This is, again, fairly self-explanatory. Humanities, you can see English and social studies broken out 9-12 with department heads. And then on the right, you can see the additional coaching, particularly in the area of humanities in middle school. We've got the Westside Middle School Global Studies coach and an additional literacy coach. The next one, world language. World language is a little bit different in that Mr. Gomes has responsibility not just for our English language learners and the ESL Reception Center, which are the two middle and right columns, but also the world language program. So he's got sort of hybrid responsibilities there. There's just a traditional 612 department head for world language, but then you'll see the additional support for our vastly growing, quickly growing ELL population. The middle is the ELL department head 612, and then the SIOP coaches who are primarily at the high school. I think we have one at Westside Middle School at this point, and they are pushing in, after quite intensive training, they're pushing in specific services for those English language learner students. And then underneath, ESL instructional paras. Those of you who were here a few years ago will remember that we did put in half-time paraprofessionals who were bilingual, and we tried to put them in a variety of elementary schools particularly to provide support for those students. So those paras are the exception to this is a certified staff grid. That's somewhere where we have non-certified staff who are providing language-based services. And then on the right, you can see the reception center, which is primarily clerical staff, but also interpreters. And then this is the other area that you might call just a little bit less formulaic. Oh dear, hold on. Hey, Jefferson.
You don't want that to happen. I would not.
Okay, so director of reading right here. The reason I say this one's a little bit less formulaic is because you see a higher number of non-certified staff in this area. This is the area where we've been having a lot of conversation about staffing. So Chris Press is the director of all the reading programs, and she has an assistant director to the right there, 206 administrator Pam Dalton, who does a lot of the Title I, actually all the Title I work as well. So that's a really big budget and a big program to manage, which is why there's an assistant director there as well. And then you can see the 4 large boxes: department head for reading, 6'8", and then the literacy specialist, which look a lot like the math specialist that we just talked about a few minutes ago. Again, certified staff that are divided across the buildings. Interventionists, and those are those non-certified 100-day employees that we put in a couple of years ago. They're akin to seasonal employees. They only work for a limited period of time. They typically work 3 or 4 days a week, and their role is to push in kind of small group work with kids in the run-up to what used to be the CMTs and now SBAC. And they're used in slightly different ways across the elementary school buildings. No, they're non-certified staff. Although I will tell you that many of them anecdotally are retired teachers or former teachers, but they do not need to be certified. They're given scripted information, and they work with typically groups of 5 or 6 kids at a time in half-hour intervals. So they touch a lot of kids in the course of a day. But again, different buildings use them differently, but that seems to be the most common way. Most of them are at the elementary level. You see 16 spread across the building, elementary interventionists. And then underneath, we do have secondary interventionists, and I know at the high school they use them in different ways, but they tend to use them for some tutoring work as well. So that's how they're reflected there. And then to the right, you see instructional paraprofessionals. These are the old, you might remember, we used to call them Title I reading, first grade reading paras. And we reduced them to halftime quite a few years ago. I think it was probably the first year I was here that a lot of them went to halftime. So they are spread across the unit as well, and they received some individualized training, and that was a model that we started with on a full-time basis, and the interventionists were a kind of a modification on that model. So again, technically those folks all are for content purposes under the director of reading, but day in, day out, your building principals will tell you that they have direct supervision over those interventionists. And then art and PE. This is the one we just mentioned a few minutes ago. The curriculum coordinator position we eliminated with budget cuts a few years ago. And so we've broken them down by area, fine and applied arts, and PE health. And largely that's a secondary function, even high school function. And so you can see those department heads are broken down by 9-12. And then under fine arts K5 and PE K-5, we've been left with kind of doing a lead teacher structure. Those are the folks that in the summer will coordinate schedules. They will make sure that everybody's got the sufficient time that they need in the buildings. And boy, it is an art and a science to put that together. It's a huge grid to make sure that all of the elementary schools have sufficient time. So those folks are compensated as lead teachers essentially. And it would be nice to have the coordinator, but at this point, this is kind of how we're making it run. And seems to be doing, I think, okay, they do a mammoth job, those folks. And then, just for your own information, this is the special ed area. Again, the Director of Student Services, or Pupil Services, Debbie Peterson, is at the top of the grid. And then there are 2 coordinators, one at the elementary level, one at the secondary level. And you can see under each, those are special ed coordinators. So there are department heads and clerical staff. Now remember that the department heads are the secondary evaluators for the special ed staff. So they go in, they won't do the summative evaluations, but they go in and they do help share the load of the observations, and we're talking about 45, 55 people each that they are overseeing. So those department heads, without them, that would leave an enormous burden on the 2 coordinators to try to get to all of the special ed staff. So that's why there are department heads there. And then moving to the middle of the grid, PPS services with Dr. Grayson, that's basically all else. So occupational therapists and physical therapists, social workers, and school psychologists all fall under her. So she bears responsibility for the observation and evaluation of all of that staff. And you'll remember that we added social workers to every building shortly after Newtown. And we've been gradually increasing in order to meet increasing demands from IEPs for special needs students. And then to the right, SPED organizational really is just intended to refer to how we make it happen. So all of the PPTs that get scheduled, who oversees them, we have facilitators that sit in those and work with certified staff that come to those PPT meetings. So that's why you see an extra box there. And then clerical, so that's the billing, out of district placement billing, busing, a variety of clerical functions that need to happen to make the special ed services work. And then lastly, to the right, guidance, purely a 612 function. So we have guidance counselors at, in the middle schools and mostly at the high school, more at the high school. And there's one department head for all of those folks as well. So that's kind of the overview. And to go back, I think, Phyllis, to your questions, you can see in some of the earlier slides how the coaches are built in. And that's a organizational nightmare from my perspective to try to figure out how they fit in. But I think that's kind of our best guess at where they fall. So
Thank you.
questions?
Thanks, Kim. Does anybody have any questions? Phyllis?
Good.
The department heads, do any of them teach?
Yes.
Do they all teach?
Yes.
So what's the?
They are on a 0.4, point 0.4 release. 0.4 teaching, 0.6 release.
Speak up.
Point for department.
Right.
0.4 teaching.
0.4 teaching, 0.6 release. And there also is a department head. They have a department head stipend as well. And that is newly negotiated because it reflects now, where it did before, the number of people that they're responsible for working on observations and evaluations. And there's a broad disparity between the sizes of some of those groups. So we negotiated a change that would more fairly reflect how many people they have responsibility for.
No.
I just want to, can we get a copy emailed to us?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think I have some questions, but I don't want to
Yeah.
take it up to the time.
Okay.
Thank you. All right.
Yeah, just a question, like some of these coaches and all, are any of these in split schools? Or what
Not
happens
usually
if a
microphone.
teacher is, like, it says that, I think, travels to 2 or 3
Yes.
different schools? Now, how does
Yes.
the evaluation work on that? Who's the person directly responsible?
In those cases, and I'll tell you that to be honest, it's tricky. And in those cases, we tend to, certain administrators take the lead in certain years for a particular staff that roams around the district. These sort of folks that are transient, that move from building to building. So it may be, for example, you might have a PE teacher that goes to AIS and Shelter Rock and Park Avenue. And in that case, our experience has been one administrator may say, look, I'm going to take that PE person for this year, for this cycle, and they may rotate that around based on how many observations they have to do. Part of this is a work in process because now that we've put Marzano in and we've got responsibility for so much of the observing, it's really trying to make sure that we are nimble enough to make adjustments so no one gets completely overwhelmed.
Okay, so the person does know who the evaluator is,
absolutely.
and that person stays for the year at least.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Just a question for the administrators in the crowd. Does this chart work for you? I mean, any feedback, any comments, any suggestions, recommendations?
We make it work. More would be helpful. We're truthfully,
Clearly.
That's the reality. But we make it work.
Okay.
And it definitely gets tricky at the middle school because there are 3 buildings. So
It's particularly difficult for department heads who have 3 or 4 buildings, have 2 middle schools, have the REACH program, have the high school.
Right.
It's difficult, there's no doubt about it, but it is what it is, and we make it work. We're in constant communication. We sit down at the beginning of the year to determine who's evaluating whom, and we try to be fair in terms of the load, in terms of the responsibilities and the number of buildings and so forth. I would say probably special ed is the one department that's most overwhelmed because of the large numbers and the number of buildings. But,
Thanks.
Just one last point too for the board. When you see a vacant position like the art and music slot, they're not budgeted. They were in a sense cut and are vacant there, but they're not carried in the budget as placeholders. The money was cut years ago.
Anybody else? Thanks, Kim. Good job. Oh, Kim's breaking down, the attention's going to be where it should be, and people that are here. I'd like to introduce the Honorable Mayor.
Thanks, Aileen. Good evening, everybody. Good to see you. I bring a check. That's always good. And this is for you, Joe. Tonight, the Danbury Educational Foundation is going to be awarding $11,823.78 worth of DEF Classroom Excellent Grants. So we had, probably to give you some scope of how many applications, we had about 30 applications. The board went and reviewed all of them. They do have one $5,000 grant in here as well. And we encourage you to continue to identify, when we put out these applications in the fall, to spread the word amongst your colleagues, let them know that there is some money available. We've done one-shot sort of ongoing grants of anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000, $3,500 for special projects, teams that might need dollars to go on a trip to a competition during the summer. The hockey team, the combined hockey team has benefited as well. So all this money is raised personally by moi, and we do that through the golf tournament. Mr. Picasso hasn't played yet, but we're going to make him play at some point, as well as we solicit from our corporate partners. We're going to continue to try to spread our wings a little bit through the Education Foundation. We really want to make an effort towards our alumni. Danbury High School graduates about 600-700 young people every year. We've got people of all walks of life in all areas of the world that have done very, very well, and we're trying to go back and reconnect with them and ask them to potentially join us in helping our children. You can dedicate your donation. It is tax deductible. It's a 501c3, and you can say specifically, I want this used for a high school program. You don't get to pick the program, but you at least can say it will go to the high school or your particular elementary school. I went to Pembroke, go Pembroke, or whatever. So without further ado, what we're going to do is I'm going to just read off the amount of the grant, and I have a letter, and then the check goes to Joe, and then he'll disperse it for you later on. And then our chairperson of the board just asked if you could spend just a quick moment sort of explaining what your project is. So for the first grant I have, it's for $1,500 for the Backyard Biodiversity Program at Rogers Park Middle School, and it's Bernardo De Castro, Danny Heider, and Barbara Myers-Letson. So if anybody's here from that group. Can you just tell us a little bit about what the project is?
Yeah, so about 5 years ago,
we started on the back of the school in a little grass space. We started some vegetable beds and started with 4 vegetable beds. And every year since that started, students have been coming out, planting a square foot of soil, and we harvested in June. And we try to impart what is the process of understanding how ecology works on a bigger sense, and how, what a plant needs. So, and what are the efforts they need to do to sustain an effort that is like 3 months long. So since Danny joined, we started also opening more in the direction of these native plants. We had this invasion of Japanese knotweed that kept busting our fence, and so we have students tackling the Japanese knotweed and replacing it with plants that attract bugs that live here, and then the bugs attract birds, and you get an ecosystem growing. And so there's a lot of education that's going on because of the space. We're hoping this year to create an astronomical wheel where we're mapping the sunrises in the equinoxes and solstices, and we've been out there like 6 in the morning to see where the sun is rising, and we're going to create this star that's going to be pointing. If you go on Google Earth and you look at Danbury, Rogers Park, you can see the space, and it looks pretty nice from our perspective. The kids are very happy about it. They keep coming back. We get high schoolers that come back. There's kids already in 10th grade that keep coming back and helping us out. So. And now, yeah, that's right. I forgot. Last year we started we created a civic bog, which is something common in New England, and it has a very peculiar and interesting set of plants and animals that live associated with it, like carnivorous plants, which the kids would really like to look at and understand. So that's joined with native plant gardens, so created more of the ecosystem thing that we're trying to work on. Thank you.
Good job.
You gonna see if you can grow more money in there?
Yeah.
I'll try.
Is that an interesting plan?
Our next grantee project was called Strengthening Our Students' Math Base. The grant award was for $1,368, and that's Carol D'Alessandro and from the King Street campus. Is Carol?
This is a program to help the SRBI students, since that's a focus right now in mathematics, is encouraging those students. It's a visual mathematics program called ST Math, and it will be able to get 30 students onto the program, and also be able to buy 2 mini iPads, 1 for each campus, to be able to support these students. So we're really excited.
Congratulations. Keep up the good work. This next grant is entitled From Egg to Chick. And it's at Shelter Rock School to the amount of $1,485, and it goes to Elizabeth DeResto.
Well, I guess it started because I remember hatching chicks when I was in elementary school, so it seemed like a very long time ago, but it was a great project that stuck with me. We have 106 kindergartners at Shelter Rock School. So with this money, we'll actually be able to purchase incubators and eggs for all 5 classrooms. So that's a lot of kids that will have hopefully a lifelong wonderful experience. And the great thing too is now we'll have the incubators in our school. So we've also offered the use of the incubators to other classes as well. So it's not just for kindergarten. We get first dibs on when we want to hatch our eggs, but any of the other classrooms at our school can use them as well.
This next grant is for the We Q Clue, the Inquiry Documentary 2015. It's for $1,000 at the Westside Middle School Academy, and it goes to my ex-student Jen Powers, who looks a lot better than I do. So, Jen,
Thank you very much, and thank you everybody. It's nice to see everybody here. This documentary is actually born of the fact that this school is so rooted in inquiry learning, And inquiry learning is where the students are given a task and they have to actually solve their way and work their way through it. And it's quite challenging for a teacher to construct this activity because it has to be very structured but also very loose. And the thinking was we would go out into the community and work with Dorothy Day and get a group of about 25 kids and evaluate their processes, and then come back to school and then try and create something with our digital printer or use an app or use something that's technological since our school is so computer-based, and build something that in turn we could bring back to Dorothy Day or the entity that we end up with, and that would be used as a real-world tool to help the place operate more wisely. And through the process, the kids would be, it would be mostly student-led, but there would be interspersed pieces where teachers will be talking about the whole frustrating fact that it's so difficult but also so challenging and so on and so forth. So the idea is to have a very polished piece about the whole process at the school. So again, thanks very much.
This grant is for something called Building Community Through Writing. The grant amount is $1,470.78. It goes to Stanley Ruff and Haystown Avenue Schools, and that's Jamie Pandolfi and Megan Viola.
Hi everyone. Meg and I wanted to come up with an idea to get our classes together. She teaches at Sadley Ruff 4th grade and me at Haystown 5th grade, and we were asking the kids about Danbury and their community, and basically
we got limited response. We know there's a mall and we know there's a new STEM school, but students really didn't have a great understanding about the people in their community and everybody that works so hard to make a difference. So Ms. Pandolfi and I, we thought about Common Core, we thought about our district goals, and we said it would be a great opportunity to invite politicians, police enforcement,
emergency personnel, the Rotary clubs. It's 5 field trips back and forth. The kids have already FaceTimed with each other, and you have letters coming to you soon, and they've written letters. We send them back and forth. While one class writes, the other will revise and edit, and then the other will type, which also helps with our computer for the new SBAC. And in the end, the kids will be working on all their Common Core objectives while learning more about the community where they live. So hopefully as they get older, they'll want to give back and do more. The more they know, the better that they'll do. That's it.
And finally, last but not least, we have a grant called Accessible Theater. The grant total is for $5,000 to Park Avenue School, and it goes to Dave Krafik and my good buddy Roseanne Kovalevsky. So congratulations.
Wow, I'm just beside myself. Like, never in our wildest dreams did we ever think that if we wrote this grant, I'm in name only, I just have to say here, I encouraged, Roseanne came to me and said, I need to write this grant because we got to send these kids to the theater, Going to the theater has been a long-time tradition at Park Avenue School. We've been doing it for years, and it started back when we didn't have enough money to send the kids to Boston anymore. So Beth White and I said, what can we do? We have to do something big, and she loved the theater, and I loved the theater, so I said, we're going to the theater. That's what we're going to do. We're going to expose these kids to something that they may not ever get a chance to do, ever, and it's very expensive. So the first year we did it, and this was back in 95 and 96, that we bought the cheap seats, the high dollar seats, and it was a really nice experience, yet it wasn't good enough. So I said, Beth, next year we're going to go, and we're getting the middle level seats or the better seats. And she goes, how are we going to do that? And I said, we're going to fundraise ourselves off. We're going to fund. I got my camera over here. So she said, okay, you can do it. What do you want to do? We're selling popcorn. We're selling fruit. We're doing all that stuff. But as time evolved, you can't do any of that anymore with all the food policies and stuff like that. So it really, truly makes it difficult for us to raise money to send these kids to the theater. Also, at Park Avenue School, which was a long-time tradition, is we always had a 5th grade play, and it was Shakespeare. It was Shakespeare in the Park. And it was geared to elementary schools, and years ago we used to invite all the elementary schools to come and watch, and then we kind of got away from that a little bit with timing. But a lot of our students, it was their first exposure to theater. And a lot of our students became leads in the Danbury High School plays. You know, Lauren Brown, Beauty and the Beast was spectacular. Nick Huell, you know, was Gaston in that one, but Nick and Grace, and there's so many Park Avenue students that we see that participate in the play and then also get these major roles. So going back to this, we had just said, you know, over the years and with our school population not having a lot of funds and having our hands tied on how we're able to fundraise to send these kids to the theaters, it gives us them experience that they may not ever get in their lives. This may be the only time that they go to the theater. That we just said, we have to do it. You know, Roseanne came and says, I'm gonna write this grant. And we have an anonymous person over here whose name didn't get on the grant. He was our co-editor, I would have to say. And, you know, and then Roseanne said, Dave, I'm putting your name on the grant too. I said, well, go ahead, you know, but if they like me, maybe it'll work. If they don't, maybe it won't, you know. But never in our wildest dreams did we think writing this grant that we would get this. We are truly honored to receive this grant so that we can this year provide this opportunity for these kids. And it'll just be spectacular for them. Spectacular. So thank you very much.
What are they going to see? What are you going to see?
Well,
it's a long story.
It's a long story, but the show that we had has now been canceled. So we're scrambling now, and we have a couple other things here, you know, that we're looking at. So we will put it to good use, and we find something. You know, even years ago, we lost a play. We lost Little Women, and we ended up finding an off-Broadway play that we got the people to, the producer. It didn't open until August, but I called the theater, and because we had to send these kids. It was a takeoff on Shakespeare. It was called Fools in Love, and we had just did A Midsummer's Night's Dream, but it was Midsummer's Night's Dream set to 50s music. So we found out that they were opening in August, so I called the producer and I said, hey, is there any way you guys are practicing in the theater ahead of time? We need to go in June. He goes, absolutely, come on down. He opened the theater for us. They practiced. They brought the kids on the stage. So there's something out there and we will find it, but we're not 100% sure yet because these kids have to go to the theater. They just have to go. So, also, did you want to say anything? Sorry, I didn't mean to talk. Give me a microphone and then just go. Yeah, go right ahead.
I just wanted to thank Rod Fairchild for being such a support, and Dave. It's a great team to work for, and I think this is really something the kids are going to remember forever, and that's what's important. This is all about the kids.
Just the same thing. Last year, had the opportunity to, and like you say, we raised money all year. And there was one little girl next to me at the play that we went to last year, Newsies, and the girl was crying. And I said, what's the matter, honey? And she couldn't speak because the grandiose of what she was seeing overwhelmed her. And I thought, boy, if this isn't worthwhile, nothing is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's pretty much all I got for you this year. We'll see you next year with another round of grants.
First of all, thank you very much, and your foundation very, very much. This is unbelievably wonderful. Somebody tell me what the supplemental grant is? Mayor Goddard, do you know?
What's that?
Supplemental grant?
There was, I believe there is one for the combined hockey.
Danbury High School Hockey Booster and Blue Line Club.
Yes, that is in the amount of, I think she cuts that check directly to them. There is a supplemental grant that's out there. I think Elisa probably mails it directly to the club. But we'll take care of it. Is Joanne here? Okay, yeah, she,
I wasn't worried that they were.
they worked that out together,
Just didn't know what it was.
Finance, I want to say about $2,500. Oh, it's for the, it's to support the hockey program.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's good. So, I mean, everything was represented. I mean, this is the most fabulous thing. We got a little bit of everything. Are you leaving, sir?
No, I'm just there.
Could you stay for a while? Thank you. All right, thank you. Thanks to all of you. I really, one more round. All right, all right, let's quickly do the action items.
Ready? Go. That the Board of Education accept the January 2015 operating results analysis from the general fund in accordance with 15-39.
Seconded.
Second by Mr. Holly. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Objections, abstentions, no? Seeing none, passes.
That the Board of Education accept the January 2015 operating results analysis from the grants projects in accordance with 15-40.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Matrina. Any objections? Questions? Questions, Mr. Holly.
Any additional grants forthcoming? How is our grant writer doing?
Update. We continue to work on some grants from the makerspaces. We did a meeting actually today at Union Savings. We had some early college funding. We are pursuing some federal grants. We also do have our 501, but we're still mostly in procurement mode, I'll say, for grants. We have Dr. Glass, Dr. Salcom, more additional grants from grant writer.
I just wanted to, if I could, a tiny little thing. You've heard us talk about a three-dimensional printer.
Yes.
I'm going to pass it. I was at the high school this morning with the media specialist for me. This was made one-piece construction on a three-dimensional printer. So that's what our kids are getting into now. One of the local physicians is actually making body parts.
You should microphone, please.
Sorry. It's true. One of our area
What's he
physicians.
making?
Body parts.
Is he working on?
Coming soon. Implants, facial implants, and they're being made the same way. So it's a wonderful thing. We're down now to the 6th grade with this, and through our grant writing efforts, we're hoping to get into the elementary schools pretty soon. The other thing I've been very remiss on, she hasn't left. Viola, could you just share as a grant winner, how long have you been teaching?
I've been teaching, this is my first official year. I'm so blessed to be at Hadestown for 2 years student teaching with Miss Pandolfi here. I can't stand up here and not thank her for everything.
So about 5 months?
Yes, yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Oh, no, I didn't. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Any extensions? Objections? Seeing none, it passes. Can you see?
That the Danbury Board of Education authorize the superintendent of schools to accept the educational specifications and complete grant applications ED 049 for state approval for the roof replacement at Hadestown Avenue School in accordance with 15-41.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Jacobsack. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay.
That the Danbury Board of Education authorize the superintendent of schools to accept the educational specifications and complete grant application ED 049 for state approval for the roof replacement at King Street Primary School in accordance with 15-42.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Ferguson. Any questions?
In an effort to save Mrs. Molinaro's voice, let's also approve 1543 and 1544 regarding King Street and South Street schools accordingly.
Thank you, Mr. Holland.
Thank you, Mr. Hawley.
Madam Chair, just for state record, they need to be read individually.
I thought
I free pairs.
But thanks anyway.
Yeah, I tried.
Thanks,
Trust me.
Who seconded that? Mr. Ferguson? Okay. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any objections or abstentions? No. Go.
That the Danbury Board of Education authorize the superintendent of schools to accept the educational specifications and complete grant application ED 049 for state approval for the roof replacement at King Street Intermediate School in accordance with 15-43.
Second by Mrs. Cooper. All in favor?
Aye.
Moving along.
That the Danbury Board of Education authorize the superintendent of schools to accept the educational specifications and complete grant application ED 049 for state approval for the roof replacement at South Street School in accordance with 15-44.
Second. Seconded by Ms. Transola. All in favor?
Aye.
Moving along. All right. We're going to go into the superintendent's report. And what we'd like to talk about.
Well, yes, item B, I'd like to talk about an executive session.
Okay.
And there's another item. So
Right.
I can quickly just.
May I hear a motion to go into executive session? I'm very sorry, it's because it has to do with school safety. We need to discuss it here. And except with the exception of the mayor, yeah, that's why he wants to talk about it.
I make a motion that we enter into the executive session for the purpose of discussing the confidential matter.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Everybody, thank you very much. We'll come back in the public session after this, but there's really nothing else left on our agenda. I'm terribly sorry. We'll see you next week.